It is no secret that consistency is the key to having any type of success, and content creation is no different. In fact, you've likely heard every single one of your favorite creators say consistency is what got them there. The one skill that I can personally hang my hat on is just that, consistency. I've been able to post a piece of content every single day for close to 6 years without missing a single day. As a result, I've been able to grow an audience of over 8 million followers across platforms and generate millions of dollars for my businesses. If there's one thing that I can go back to my beginner self and share, it would be the creator growth model. I am about to show you a simulation, the actual progress that it takes to become a very successful creator. And the reason why it's so powerful is that it gives you assurance that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Oftentimes, we don't have anyone local to us that have had success as a creator to tell us, okay, this is what you're supposed to do now, this is what you're supposed to do then, this is what you should be posting, this is how you respond to a plateau, this is normal and this isn't normal. And this creator growth model you can point to and say, I know exactly where I fall in my own journey. I know exactly which next step to take. I have not seen anyone else online do what I'm about to show you right now. And I promise you, it should give you a sense of perspective, inspiration, and confidence to move forward. Let's get right into it. I want to first start off by drawing us a graph. On the x-axis, I want to write time. And on the y-axis, I will put followers. And I want to show you each step of the creator's growth journey. First, I want to introduce stage 1. This is what I call the negative plateau. The negative plateau looks something like this. And what is actually happening is if you're using a personal account, I recommend that you do, you're going to have a lot of friends or family members that don't care about your creator journey, and they'll start to unfollow your account. Now, if this happens, you're going to have more unfollowers than you'd have new followers, meaning that this difference is actually what is causing this bottom plateau. So initially, you're gonna be creating a lot of content, but it's gonna look ugly. You're gonna be posting a lot, but you're gonna recognize that you're actually just losing followers, and it's going to feel disheartening. But you can't quit here because you're about to be on the brink of something special. In phase 2, you're going to be slowly starting to head upwards as more and more accounts find you, but then you'll have your first peak. Now, this peak is because one of your posts has actually performed significantly better than the rest. In other words, you got in your first viral video. And that means that the new followers will actually increase significantly during this period of time. And so now you're seeing an increase of new followers, and that is higher than your number of unfollowers. So now this peak is what you're experiencing in this number of new followers gained. Unfortunately, just as you are starting to garner confidence, it's actually gonna smack you in your mouth and then bring you back down through another plateau that you'd experience. And so why this happens is as that viral video is no longer viral, you're gonna start to see more of those unfollows, and your number of new followers has now decreased in its rate. So if we were to look at your number of new followers, it's still better in terms of its rate than before, but your number of unfollowers has now superseded that once more. And that's why you get this negative slope and then ultimately another plateau. But before you feel too disheartened, I want you to recognize that when you get to this point, it's actually higher than when you first started. So this is the normal creator's growth. You're going to have an increase when you first have your viral moment, but that viral moment doesn't last forever. And then once you start hitting a decrease, you're gonna start to feel disheartened as it starts to plateau once more. But you have to recognize in the grand scheme of things, you've actually increased your number of followers since the start. That is a very normal process. Then as you keep creating, you're gonna start to recognize there's more of a positive slope, and then you're gonna have your second viral moment. Again, it's gonna be followed by another negative slope and a plateau. But again, if we were to look back from the top to bottom, you have increased significantly since you've started. But this, again, is the natural ebb and flow, and you're trying to ride the positive wave as long as you possibly can. If I was to fast forward, this actually continues to happen. So then you would have another positive moment, you're gonna have another negative, another positive moment, another negative, and then eventually you're gonna have a really large peak. And this happens because all of the inputs that you've worked so hard to build in all of these prior steps are now compounding and are actually being met here at this really large peak. In other words, when you have this viral moment, all of those views tend to bleed into your existing content. People are starting to recognize you more and more, because the way that the algorithm works is that if someone sees one piece of your content, they have a high retention rate for it, they're going to show you your existing videos. So that means if this video goes extremely viral, it's going to actually do a lot of really good things for the rest of your content, right? That's when people start to go from, let's say, 4,000 followers to 10,000 followers overnight, but it's actually because they've poured in all of those previous posts. Now, ultimately, this is is a determination of success, right? This means that you've done a really good job as a creator being able to weather the storm, riding the positive waves when they're positive, and then the negative moments not responding too drastically. You're staying in a steadfast approach. Now, I want to go into telling you where creators mostly give up. Now, if you know this, and if you are experiencing this moment, you know that it's quite normal, and now you'll know how to respond to it. But most creators give up either before they've had any level of success, and that's because they've been trying, but they're seeing that negative plateau, and they're wondering, oh my goodness, is this even worth it? Now I feel like I'm being embarrassed because my friends and family are seeing it, and they're not engaging with it, and they're unfollowing. That happens a lot to us mentally. But this next big place in which most people give up is going to surprise you. It's actually after their first successful peak. And the reason for this is because their mental standards start to shift. What I mean by that is when they start to feel a level of success right around this vicinity, they're going to think that they've made it, that all of their work that they've poured in is now coming into fruition. So what happens is that during this escalation, you'll actually start to see creators have a different perspective. They'll start to say things like, my moment is finally here. I have to post more, edit longer. I have to invest into more equipment. I have to hire people. And what happens in their brain is that because they start to have a taste for success, their entire standards start to advance way too quickly. So what is happening in this moment is that a creator is tasting a level of success and they're getting way too ahead of themselves. But mentally, they're creating this artificial standard in their brain to think, all right, I have to be hitting now this viral moment each time. So in other words, a creator might be consistently experiencing 3,000 views, but they have one video that hits 50,000 views, and they're like, oh my goodness, this is my new standard for success. I have to keep consistently hitting 50,000 views. And because they don't know any better, they're gonna think, all right, I have to start changing the production level of my content. All right, I'm gonna have to do better editing. I'm gonna have to get better equipment. And they're gonna start to overcomplicate this process. But what did I just tell you? That this creator is actually gonna experience a negative decline quite quickly. So when they do start experiencing this negative plateau downwards, they start to really have a huge mental problem. So what is actually happening is they've crafted this artificial standard that's so high, but now they're experiencing normal plateau or negative decline, and their success rate is significantly lower than what they expect for themselves. That's where people burn out. I promise you, this is where oftentimes people get into a very, very, very bad mental state. When every creator comes out and they're like, I have to take a large break here, I feel so burnt out, it's because of this. They had a taste for success, and now their standard increased way too exceptionally high when they can't actually maintain that. And then as a result, when they have the negative plateau experience, which is quite normal, they don't realize that, so then they give up. So the more successful creator would have actually done something like this. I'm starting to have success, but I'm not going to change how I operate. Still same number of posts, still same amount of time spent, still using same equipment, just getting a bit better with my content skill each video. This type of creator is one that can actually remain a very steadfast approach. It's one that doesn't change just because they're feeling a high in the moment. That type of creator has a lot more success because when they have this negative plateau, they don't get disheartened. They're thinking, all right, here we go. Let's go. Let's just do it. It's a normal part of the process. I'm just gonna keep going. That type of creator is actually able to maintain their success and then hit this second peak, this third, and this ultimate fourth and fifth to have this final level of success. Right? So what I'm trying to share with you in this moment is that the best, most strongest creators actually recognize that there's going to be a natural decline, and they know that their positive moment is not going to last forever, and they have to be ready for it. They have to respond to it. So when the positive moments happen, and what I didn't necessarily detail that I was trying to draw out here, is that these negative plateaus actually are much less each time because they're able to respond better. They know how to respond in these moments because they've been there before. And over time, you get better and better with your content skill. And actually, these negative moments where most people would give up is actually quite powerful because they force you to experiment with your content. They force you to try and understand which formats are actually going to be better for their use cases. And then as they find more and more successful formats and messaging angles, ultimately they're building a stronger and stronger arsenal or a more filled arsenal, right? So then next time they have a plateau, they're thinking to themselves, I've been here before, I know how to respond. I'm going to try out this new format that I have been doing in the past that I know is going to work again. They start to find a rhythm for themselves. So again, as a creator, you're going to have natural ebbs and flows. It's really how you respond in those negative moments mentally that allows you to have a lot of success. Now, there are some rare cases where a creator will actually find themselves to have initial success quite quickly. So they might be posting their first set of videos and it's actually performed immediately well. So those creators' curves may look something like this. But you can't get jealous of those people because it's actually really difficult for them just as much as it is for you when you expand your horizon or your perspective. So in the grand scheme of things, this peak might be great initially, but they're going to experience their own plateau. And if they don't know how to respond to those moments, they're going to give up just as much as anyone else would give up. And the grand scheme of things, these creators that had a lot of potential are no longer creating content because they're burnt out, or they're somebody that, doesn't know how to respond to those negative moments. They're mentally weak. Now, I do have somewhat of a controversial statement around burnout, and I heard this quote recently that says, a fire doesn't burn out because its flame is too hot. It burns out because it's lost its source of fuel. And I really do often find that this happens to creators all the time. These creators that quote unquote burn out, it's not because the work is extremely hard. It's because they start to have these artificial standards in their brain. It's because they have perceived that to be a standard for themselves, and they can't match that expectation each time. That's where people burn out. Again, it doesn't matter if you had this initial success. In the grand scheme of things, when we look at it, all successful creators should ultimately try to get to that top corner. So this creator's journey might look like something like this, like this, like this, like this, like this, like this, but it only happens to have their own successful rate at the top right of this graph if they can sustain or weather those storms. I have one more thing to share with you in terms of how can you have a strong mindset heading into 2026 as a creator. And I am also going to say something here that no one else talks about, but I've always viewed content in this way. If you're someone that right now has, let's say, 500 followers, or if you're somebody that has currently 5,000 followers or 50,000 followers or 500,000 followers, I want to walk you through how I think about content creation and my number of followers. If I were you and if I had 500 followers, I wouldn't tell myself I have 500 followers. Instead, I would tell myself I have 250. If I had 5,000 followers, I wouldn't say that I have 5,000. I would think that I have 3,000. If I have 50,000 followers, I would tell myself that I have 40,000. And if I have 500,000 followers, I'll tell myself that I have 450,000. The reason for this is because I just told you that you're going to have your negative plateaued moments. You're going to have these negative slopes when it comes to this creator growth model. So you might as well proactively know that in your mental. And for that reason, you start to not get so worked up when things aren't going your way. You don't start to get overwhelmed when you're starting to have bad moments. In other words, anytime that we work with a brand, I will never give them my exact follower count, and I'll actually give them a screenshot of something in the past. So when I had 4.5 million followers on Instagram, we would give them a screenshot of 4 million followers. Because in my brain, I have 4 million followers. And if I do decrease the number of followers, I am not gonna get worked up on it. I'm not gonna think that I'm a bad creator. I'm gonna think to myself, this is normal. I already accounted for this. And it actually allows you to do something quite special. Now, this is a little bit more complex, so hopefully you can bear with me here. If you can think about content creation in this way, something beautiful happens. This gap is not for nothing. This gap actually allows you to experiment freely. It gives you permission to fail. It allows you to think about content differently. You're not so worked up on every new follower increase. You give yourself a chance to try out different contents. You give yourself a chance to try and explore different formats or messaging. It allows you to explore even trends or carousel types. It's actually in these experimental moments that allows you to get to the next stage. It's the biggest leaps that you make because when you're not so worried about every little new follower decrease, you actually have the ability to try out something that might tap into a completely different audience. That might actually allow you to be seen at a significantly higher rate than you had been before. But most creators don't do this. Most creators are so worked up on every little follower increase and little follower decrease that they forget to experiment. They try so hard to be rigid in their content strategy, but then they'll get to 50,000 followers one day and they'll have no other content in their arsenal because they've been trying the same thing over and over again. These are the type of creators that have their peaks, but they have a very long plateau and then ultimately a negative decrease. It's because they never tried to experiment outside of what they already know. I want to mention one more last thing here in terms of what happens when creators take breaks. When creators are burning out, again, I really don't think it's because the content creation work is too heavy. It's because their perspective on it has changed, and it usually happens because they have a level of success towards it. The only thing that happens when you take these breaks are that your plateaus increase in its duration. It doesn't help you by any stretch of the imagination, right? So instead of you taking a ginormous break and then waiting for, let's say, a moment to come back and you're like, all right, this is the moment that I get really good, successful content again, then you come back and realize that your plateau is even longer. You don't do that. Just go into low intensity contents. Content doesn't require as much time or energy from you, but it can still be successful in the sense where you can show up, post it, you can help your audience, and that will again prevent these really, really long plateaus. Hopefully today has shown you something new here, right? It's all about understanding the creator growth journey and what is normal and what isn't normal. And if you know that, then hopefully you recognize, okay, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be and this is how I'm supposed to respond. I hope that this was enjoyable, guys. I hope that you guys have an amazing holiday, and I really do hope that 2026 is the year in which you actually become a creator. Leave your comments below if you have any questions, give this video a thumbs up, and of course subscribe. I will see you all at the top.